Let me just quickly explain. Last summer, Tim DeChristopher and I joined the faculty of both Montana State and the University of Utah at the university's Environmental Humanities Center, which is in beautiful Centennial Valley. And Tim and I led the week of coursework on the subject was environmental leadership. And it was a great program, obviously students from Montana State and our own University of Utah. And at the end of the program, when the faculty and Tim and I got together to evaluate, how the program went, all Tim said was, next year, meaning this year, we need to have some music. And people are kind of caught off guard, a little surprised. We're into academics here. What do we need more music? And so he began to speak quite passionately about, if you're going to talk about any kind of movement and leadership, you got to have music. And as you might guess, he was pretty persuasive. So I think when we do it again this year, I think there's going to be some music. And so what I did was ask Tim about less than 2 weeks ago, told him that we're going to do a tribute to Pete Seeger. Would you like to write a piece that we could share in church about the role of music in social protest? And that's how we got to have Joan read that piece by Tim, which I thought was a beautiful, beautiful piece. No one exemplifies music as so integral to social protest better than Pete Seeger. He did not just sing about justice, he sang about justice from the heart. And people who know of oppression firsthand, from African Americans, Mexican Americans, refugees, migrant workers, the poor, the working poor, all those people run the whole gamut. To those who are comfortably middle class, but know that, somehow the world is out of kilter. And these people, the middle class people, have all this compassion for those who've experienced injustice, and they're looking for ways to express their sadness. Pete Seeger brought everyone together. He brought everyone together in song. And it was as if music, not just music, but his style, his leadership in music was his calling. Pete Seeger's words have been sung by many, all different classes and races and ethnicities. And his spirit remains unrivaled in leading people to sing in the midst of their anguish as hopes are dashed and dreams just slip away. Be it oppression, war, hatred, life's banalities, Pete Seeger can make any one person, let alone masses of people, feel triumphant through singing. Pete Seeger stumbled into becoming Pete Seeger, the singer-songwriter. He flirted with becoming a farmer, a forest ranger, even an artist. He was quite talented, painting watercolor sketches of farms, then knocking on the farmhouse door asking to trade a painting for a meal. I bet he heard some great stories that way. Pete Seeger went to Harvard. He went to Harvard. Can you imagine this? What a juxtaposition. He went to Harvard the same years as John F. Kennedy was there. Seeger commented how once he was just absolutely flabbergasted when he saw John F. Kennedy crossing Harvard Yard with people behind him carrying his papers for him. That was not Pete Seeger's style, let me tell you. Seeger was studying sociology with the intent of becoming a journalist, but he left Harvard in his sophomore year before taking his exams. Seeger, in fact, had a full ride scholarship, but he failed one of the winter exams, which cost him his scholarship. He was not sorry about leaving Harvard. Didn't like the cynicism there. And this is around 1939 or so. So I hear that cynicism still lingers in that institution. In the 1940s, Seeger was a member of a group called the Almanac Singers, which included Woody Guthrie. And the name derived from the belief that many farming homes had but two books, the Bible and the Almanac. They sang mainly at rallies in support of laborers. When that group broke up, he played on his own until joining the Weavers, whose version of Leadbelly's Good Night, Irene was America's best-selling record for 13 straight weeks in 1950. By 1952, an informant told the House Un-American Activities Committee that 3 of the musicians in the Weavers were communists, including Seeger. Now, those proved to be tough years because it was close to impossible to get a gig with that kind of accusation or that kind of cloud hanging over your head. Seeger's trial wasn't held until 1961, a shade to Tim DeChristopher's comments about the delaying tactics of our justice system. The jury took 1 hour and 20 minutes to find Pete Seeger guilty, and he was sentenced to a year in jail. Part of the jury's decision ended with them saying that Pete Seeger was unworthy of sympathy. Unworthy of sympathy. I wonder when our conservative friends of today pine to bring back the old, good American values. Is that what they mean? Are they telling us that some people are unworthy of sympathy in our society? Is that what Dee Benson was trying to say in sentencing Tim DeChristopher? Seeger's sentence was overturned, by the way, by the appellate court. I think it's kind of odd how in 2006, of all people, Bruce Springsteen released a record called We Shall Overcome the Seeger Sessions. He recorded Pete Seeger folk songs as a tribute to Seeger, although Springsteen did it his way, accompanied by drums, bass, piano, guitar, accordion, banjo, double fiddles, horns, and backup singers. Still, he says, he got the essence of Pete Seeger. Springsteen said in an interview with The New Yorker that he heard 100 voices in those old folk songs and stories from across the span of American history. Parlor music, church music, tavern music, street music. He claimed that Seeger had a real sense of the musician as an historical entity. I got a smile when I realized how much Chris Christie loves Bruce Springsteen. I'm not saying that there needs to be guilt by association, but people, once they make that connection, I tell you, stopping, or I should say creating traffic jams on the George Washington Bridge will seem like small potatoes when people connect the dots and they say, well, it's Chris Christie, Bruce Springsteen, and Pete Seeger? Well, who knows? It's going to be interesting. I don't know how a person like Pete Seeger comes into being. The charisma, the commitment to justice, the leadership, the music, the humility. I think it may have something to do, in fact, I think it has a lot to do with his dad, Charles Seeger, about whom not nearly enough has been said. Seeger once declared that his father was over-enthusiastic all his life. Isn't that a wonderful epitaph? Over-enthusiastic. Speaks a lot about a person's spirit. Charles Seeger was an accomplished pianist. Pete said of his dad, he thought that great symphonies would save the human race. He thought they had something to teach us that couldn't be expressed in words. Charles Seeger went to Harvard, graduated, then spent a year in Germany where he was a musical conductor in Cologne. And while there, he began to realize that he was growing deaf, and so he decided that he would concentrate instead on simply composing music. He returned to New York where he met his wife, and they were married in 1911. One of the remarkable things about Charles Seeger was that he was hired to establish the music department at UC Berkeley. One day, a friend took him to the lettuce fields east of San Francisco, where for the very first time, Charles Seeger saw these migrant kids picking lettuce, just work to the bone. And he just changed as a human being so dramatically. And he just took that on as a cause and then just really continued to rabble-rouse and, in fact, was very vociferously outspoken about World War I, so much, in fact, that UC Berkeley asked him to leave the faculty. 1927, Charles and his wife divorced, and he eventually married a composer named Ruth Crawford. They moved back east, and Charles was part of a group of musicians and composers, including Aaron Copland. The name of this group was called the Composers Collective. Sounds subversive, doesn't it? Well, it was. They wrote music specifically for strikes and unemployment lines for the New World Order. Now, Charles liked Appalachian music and is probably responsible for Copland writing Appalachian Spring. Charles introduced his son, Peter, to a woman from Kentucky who called herself Aunt Molly Jackson. She sang, "I'm a Union woman, just brave as I can be. I don't like the bosses, and they don't like me." That, said Pete Seeger, was his introduction to folk music.